If you're at a place in your life where you're feeling behind, I understand it can lead to more despair, more angst, more stress, and more anxiety. It can also be a time of transformation. Here's why. I'm going to explain 11 tips, 11 harsh truths that you need to hear in order to make this time a period of transformation for you. And the first tip is to realize that you're not alone. Like you, I still struggle with feeling like I'm not enough. I feel like I'm behind at times, whether it's comparing myself to my friends who are married with kids, whether it's comparing myself to others who have more money than me, more subscribers than me, better health than me. I still fall into that comparison trap. But what really helps me not fall deep into feeling sorry for myself during those times is realizing that so many other people are going through this. Let me tell you a little story. So probably like 5 to 10 years ago, I was at a business networking event. And at that time in my life, I thought I was so behind financially. I thought I was so behind career-wise, so far behind when it came to family goals, etc. And I was placed in a room with 14 other fitness entrepreneurs, 14 other health professionals. And we had to write down our financial stuff. We had to write down our career goals. We had to write down where we were at in life. And we had to show it to everybody else in the room and compare where we were in accordance to the other people in the room. And I honestly thought, because of my age, I honestly thought just because of the mindset I had crafted about where I was, that I would finish near last. And I was completely surprised that I actually wasn't last. I wasn't even close to last. As a matter of fact, I was near the top as far as where I was financially, where I was in my career, where I was with my life goals, etc. And so I share that because you just never know what other people are going through. It's easy to see things on social media, at family events, or even around your friends, what people look like on the outside, and you think they have it all together. But what you don't know is we're all fighting a fight. We all have demons. We all have the same limiting beliefs that many of us think we're the only person that struggles with them. So I learned a lot from that experience. And even now, when I'm struggling with a lot of the stuff that I still at times can struggle with, whether it's comparing myself to other people or just feeling like I'm behind or feeling like I'm not doing enough, whenever I talk to anybody else who's in my field or whenever I talk to my other friends, I realize that they're struggling with the same thing. But what I found is that the people who have success in their life, they don't let this get to them for very long. They realize it's just part of the process. They realize it's part of life. They realize, honestly, it's part of the human experience for us to compare ourselves to other people at times. And so, my tips for battling this are to reach out to people around you and have honest conversations. Be vulnerable. Share things with your friends. Share things with your family. Share things with your coworkers. Join online support groups. As much negativity as social media can bring, there's also a lot of positive things that it can help with as well. One of those is having these support groups where you can literally join a random group on Facebook and you can be around people that are similar to you. And you can post a question, you can post a comment, and you can post a concern. So I would just find different ways to connect with other people that are in your life, connect with other people in the online world, and so that you can just have community because community is so powerful and just share authentically what you're going through. And you'll be surprised to realize how many people are going through the exact same thing you're going through. Maybe not the exact same scenario, but certainly something similar. The second thing I think you really must do is audit your inner circle. Now, what do I mean by that? I mean, write down right now the top 5 to 10 people that you spend the most time with. And next to each of those people, write down some of the things that you do with them, write down how they treat you, write down how you met them, write down your relationship, write down how you feel after spending time with them. And if you're writing down things like, I feel drained, I feel anxious, I feel depressed, I feel stressed, or you're writing things down like, all they do is make fun of me, all we do is party together, all they do is tell me I can't do things, then I think it's time to really take a look at those people and make a decision on whether or not they're meant to be in your life. Because I've learned from my own personal experience that you are the people you spend time with. My parents told me that as a kid that you're judged by the company you keep. I never honestly believed it until I became a drug addict. And the reason I say that is because I had convinced myself that my life was normal because everybody around me was doing the exact same thing I was doing. Everybody else was getting high. Everybody else was partying. Everybody else was making fun of each other. So I was convinced that that was how life was supposed to be. And it wasn't until I got out of that situation that I realized, wow, like that is not normal. That is not how my life is supposed to be. So you just have to be really careful with the people that you spend time with. And I think one of the biggest mistakes that people make is they justify reasons for keeping people in their life. Oh, I've known that person for 10 years. Oh, I used to sleep on that person's couch when I was a kid. Oh, I went to high school with them. I went to college with them. And a harsh truth you must understand is that people have choices to grow with you. If you're looking to grow and to transform your life, you have to understand that those people are making a choice not to grow with you. And you must spend time with people that have common futures and not common pasts. You have to spend time with people that bring the best out in you. If you're somebody who's already feeling behind in your life, you don't have time to spend time with people that are complaining all the time, that are gossiping, that are talking down to you, that are limiting you, that are potentially encouraging you to make poor decisions. You don't have time for that. And so what you need to start doing is focusing on how you can create more relationships in your life that reflect where you want to go. And so one of the things that I encourage you to do, that I've encouraged the people that I've coached to do, is write down what your goals are in your life. Write down what you want to get out of your life. Write down some of your hobbies. Write down some of the things that you want to be doing that will lead to you becoming a better version of yourself, and figure out where you find those people. So for instance, in the space that I've been in for a long time, the health and fitness space, I always tell people, if you're looking to get healthier, if you're looking to change your body, if you're looking to eat better, then going to a place like a gym, going to a yoga studio, going to a spin studio, going to a Pilates class is going to be a great way to find other people that are on the journey with you. Going to conferences that are health and fitness related are going to be a great way to find people that are on the path with you. So hopefully this is starting to make sense, because I think that so many people are limited in their life because of the people they spend time with. And I remember when I started to let go of the people in my life that were bringing me down, the people that were constantly getting high, the people in my life that were making fun of me for where I was going, I realized that my life got a lot better because I didn't have that extra weight on my back. Because I understand where you are right now. If you're feeling lost or behind, you feel like this massive weight on your back and you can't get it off because you feel just almost suffocated. And what happens when you spend time with negative people, it adds way more weight that's needed. So once you can alleviate that weight and start to spend time with better people, I think you will find that your life will slowly start to get better. And tip number 3 is you have to step on the life scale. So in my business, people make a change when they step on the scale and they see a number that they don't like, or they go to the doctor's office and they realize they are pre-diabetic or their blood pressure is way too high. So I think in life, you need a reality check, because I think in order to know where you're going, you have to find out where you're at. Like, where are you? Like, where are you in your finances? Where are you in your health and fitness? Where are you in your relationships? Where are you in your goals? Like, are you happy? Like, understand where you're at. Like, write this all down and then measure it up and say, okay, am I actually behind? Because you may realize that you're not behind. You may realize that you're making more money than most people. You may realize that you've been in a relationship way longer than most people have in their life. You may realize that your health and fitness isn't that bad. You may realize that you're not the failure that you think you are. But you're not going to know any of this stuff until you step on the life scale and understand where you're at. I shared the example earlier of how I thought that my life scale was going to be way too high and I was going to be like way out of sync with where I should be. And that I realized that I was much better off than I thought. Again, it's not to say this is going to happen to every single person, but the only way to know if you're better off than you thought is to understand where you're at. Tip number 4, find virtual mentors. When you're at a position in your life where you feel behind, there's going to be this massive headwind coming at you. And you have to find ways to combat the wind, combat all of the stuff that's coming at you, combat the negativity, combat the negative self-talk, combat the failures that you thought you made in your life, combat the people that are doubting you, right? So you have to find virtual mentors. Now, these can come in the form of podcasts. They can come in the form of books. They can come in the form of watching videos like this. They can come in the form of certain courses. But you have to find people in your life that you look up to, because I think that success leaves clues. And I think that when you find virtual mentors, you also realize that you're not alone, because a lot of the people that we look up to in our life, a lot of the people that have podcasts, a lot of the people that have had success in their life, they were in a similar position to you and I. They experienced adversity. They made poor decisions in their life. They had failed relationships. They had failed businesses. They may have struggled with addiction. Like, so many people who are at the top as we perceive them to be now have made mistakes in their life. So I think when you find these virtual mentors, you will realize that. And if you're somebody that is looking to find different people in your life other than the negativity, it will at least give you some inspiration and positivity to help keep you going on your life transformation journey. And so one of the things that can help really accelerate this success is obviously to hire a coach or to hire a trainer. But if you're somebody who doesn't have a lot of money or is just looking for something you can do right now, finding virtual mentors is something that's going to be key for your success, for not feeling so far behind in your life. So again, once you step on the life scale and get a reality check of where you're at and finding out the things you need to work on, then you'll be able to understand who are some virtual mentors in your life that you need to find. Could be somebody in business, could be somebody in relationships, could be somebody in the mental health space, could be somebody in the health and fitness space. But you're never going to know until you get that reality check that I talked about a moment ago. Step number 5, and this is going to sound cliche, is you have to adopt the mindset that everything happens for a reason and that everything is happening for you and not to you. Because what tends to happen if we adopt the mindset of everything is happening to me, it's easy to slip and fall into that victim mindset and say things like the world's against me. I'm never going to have any success. I'm a complete failure. I'm a loser. I'm never going to amount to anything. But when you adopt the everything happens for me mindset, what happens is you start to see failure as just part of the process. You start to see the negative things that happen in your life as just part of the bigger picture, part of the journey, because you're not looking at it as something that's happening to you. You're looking at it as something that's making you stronger. You're looking at failures as ways to learn more about yourself and to gain wisdom and insight on how you can better propel yourself on the journey. And for me, I've definitely fallen into the trap of believing that everything happens to me, especially when things don't go my way, when relationships end, or I don't book a guest on my podcast, or something falls through with work, or I didn't get, some sort of thing that I wanted when it came to my career. I often will find myself saying, why is this happening to me? I can't believe I'm not getting my way in this. I must be a failure. I must be a loser. But what's happened every single time, as time has gone on, I've looked back and said, wow, I'm so thankful that those things didn't work out the way I thought they were going to or wanted them to, because I'm much happier as a result of it. And I've learned and grown so much from it. So adopt the mindset that everything happens for you, not to you, and that everything happens for a reason. Tip number 6, you got to address your mental health if need be. Now, for me, one of the most transformative times of my life, I've talked about this before with my friends and people that know me well, is that during my 20s, I was having a lot of success in my career. I was having a lot of success personally, and I was in a place where on the outside, you would think that I was thriving. But internally, I was battling some mental health stuff. I was having panic attacks, severe anxiety. I was depressed. I just felt still kind of lost in my life. And I started to go to therapy to unpack all of this because I wanted to know, why am I stressed out all the time? Why am I anxious? Why do I still feel like a failure despite all the success that I've had so far in my life after getting out of jail? And my therapist asked me some hard questions. My therapist asked me, what was your childhood like? And I kind of got a little defensive because in previous therapy sessions, I talked about my parents getting divorced. I talked about being bullied. I talked about addiction stuff. I talked about not making the sports teams that I wanted to. I talked about being rejected by girls. I talked about all these things. And she says, no, what was your environment like? How did you feel? And I was like, oh, I was stressed out all the time. There was chaos. And she's like, well, your body is used to anxiety. Your body is used to chaos. Your body is used to stress. And so that's your normal. That's your homeostasis. Physiologically, that is what is normal for your body. Your body is going to revert back to that state to keep itself safe and survive because that's what you're taught as your normal. And once I learned that, it was a game changer for me because I realized that there was nothing wrong with me. I wasn't broken. Because for a while, I thought I was broken. I was like, is my nervous system just completely broken? Is my brain broken? Why am I feeling this way even though I've given up the drug, even though I'm working on bettering myself, even though I have a successful career, even though I'm helping to change other people's lives? Why do I feel stuck still? Why do I feel so anxious? And when I realized that A, I wasn't alone, and B, that with some work and with some understanding of what I was going through, I could change for my future. And that's what I did. It took a long time, it took several years to change my nervous system and to learn how to reduce anxiety and learn how to battle stress and to learn to better understand myself and my emotion. But over time, I got so much better. I don't have those same problems that I did back then. It's not to say that I still don't get anxiety, because of course I do, but it doesn't ruin me in the way that it did when I was in my 20s. Like there would be days where I'd be afraid to go to the gym or afraid to show up to clients because my anxiety was so bad. That's how bad it was. And now, obviously, I'm in a much better place. But I share that because it's so important to address your mental health. Because sometimes when you feel behind in your life, there could be something going on with your mental health. Or if you feel behind in your life, if you're not careful, it could lead to some mental health stuff. So just make sure that you're reaching out to a mental health professional if need be, somebody that you trust, somebody that is obviously licensed and certified. Get your brain right, get your mind right. So that if you're feeling behind in your life and you want to make this transformation, that you can do what you can to make sure that your brain is aligned and healthy for you to be able to do that. Tip number 7 is to address the way you talk to yourself. The way we talk to ourselves in many ways is subconscious. I honestly didn't realize how poorly I talked to myself until I went to jail. And one of the first things my cellmate had me do is change the way I talk to myself. Because up until the point I went to jail, I said things like, I'm a loser, I'm a piece of crap, I'm a failure, I'm never going to achieve anything in my life, I suck, I'm scared, I'm this, all these negative things. And as a result, my actions reflected that because I was essentially just telling myself that I was these things. And so my cellmate had me work on these things. It'd be change the way I talk to myself and start saying things like, I am brave, I am strong, I am confident, I can do great things, I am powerful, I am wise. And I'm not saying that if you just simply change the way you talk to yourself, that your life will magically get better. But I can tell you that if you talk to yourself in a super negative way all the time, from my experience, it certainly doesn't help at all when it comes to transforming your life. I had the good fortune of being in jail where my cellmate kind of heard the way I talked to myself based on our conversations and the way I would talk about myself when it came to him and I's dialogue. But one of the things I think can be really helpful for people is to write down on a piece of paper, like how you talk to yourself. What are the top things you're saying to yourself on a regular basis? Could be setting an alarm in your phone every hour. Could be setting an alarm in your phone once a day and just writing down how you talk to yourself. Because I think you may be surprised at how poorly you talk to yourself at times. And so I think once you begin to become aware of how you talk to yourself and some of the things that you're constantly saying to yourself about who you are, where you're at in your life, the things you don't have, not only will it be kind of a gut check to realize like, wow, like I talk horribly to myself, you'll also be able to take some action and be like, all right, like I need to really change the way that I talk to myself or I talk about myself. And I think those I am statements can be very, very powerful. And one of the things that I think can be really, really helpful with this is asking yourself, if I talk to my best friend the way I talk to myself, would they still want to be my best friend? And a lot of times the way we talk to ourselves, the answer is no. So I think it's incredibly important to be aware of how you talk to yourself and find a way that works for you, whether it's setting an alarm on your phone, whether it's going to a therapist, whether it's hiring a coach, whether it's just reflecting to a friend or family member, whatever it is, like really get your self-talk dialed in, because I think your thoughts become your words become your actions, and your actions really develop you into who you are. And it compounds over time. So get your negative self-talk in check if need be. Tip number 8 is you got to focus on today. I know it's so hard to do with the distractions that are coming at us on a regular basis. It's so hard to do with all the things that may have happened in your past or all the things that you haven't achieved in your life, but you have to focus on today, because if you're constantly thinking about all the things you've done wrong in your life, you're constantly thinking about the things you don't have, you're constantly thinking about what's going to happen to you in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, you end up freezing, right? You end up not taking any action because you're like, well, what's the point? I'm never going to get to that place anyway. Or what's the point? I've already proven to myself that I'm a failure. Or what's the point? Like I've already made this many mistakes. Or what's the point? By the time I get to this age, I'm not going to be able to do anything anymore. Whatever the excuses are, right? Just focus on the present. One of the things that really helped me transform my life when I got out of jail is I identified the person that I wanted to become. I knew that I wanted to be healthy. I knew that I wanted to lose a certain amount of weight. I knew that I wanted self-confidence. I knew that I wanted to be in recovery. I knew that I didn't want to go back to jail. I had all these things in my mind that I wanted to achieve. But I knew that if I focused on the past, that I would fail because my past told me that I was going to fail. I'd failed everything in my life essentially up until the point I went to jail. But I knew if I could, in the back of my mind, have this idea of who I wanted to become and then realize, okay, what are the things that I need to do today that will allow me to get one step closer to that person, one day closer? What does that look like? And for me at the time, it was working out every day. For me at the time, it was spending time with certain people and staying away from other people. For me at the time was the way I talked to myself, like I said earlier. For me at the time, it was eating a certain way. It was staying away from drugs, obviously. It was staying away from certain places. And I knew if I did those things each day, it wouldn't guarantee me that I would transform my life, but it would at least give me a chance. And I knew that if I did the other things, like the opposite of what I just said, and focusing on the past and future tripping, that I count myself out of the game and I wouldn't even be able to play anymore. And on top of that, you have to develop this whatever it takes mentality. Because when you're in the thick of adversity and you're feeling lost and behind in life, there's a lot that you feel like's going against you. You're like, oh my gosh, like I'm a lot older than I used to be. Or oh my gosh, like I failed so many times. Or oh my gosh, I don't have hope in myself to achieve certain things in my life, or whatever the example is. But you have to have that whatever it takes mentality. Like I'm gonna do whatever it takes today to stay away from drugs. I'm gonna do whatever it takes today to work out. I'm going to do whatever it takes today to get that writing in. I'm going to do whatever it takes today to respond to those emails. I'm going to do whatever it takes today to spend time with people I care about. Whatever the example is, like whatever it takes, because it's easy to justify your excuses based on past behavior. And it's easy to justify your excuses based on the idea that things may never play out the way you want them to in your life. So you got to focus on today. As hard as it is, you must do it. And I think if you can do that, what you'll find out is that over time, your life will get better. For me, what happened was after a few days of doing the things I just talked about, I was like, oh, wow, like I haven't used drugs in like 3 or 4 days. This is amazing. I've exercised like 3 or 4 days in a row without having somebody telling me to do so, like I was in jail. Or I've eaten, X amount of days healthy without having somebody to hold me accountable, or whatever the example is. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. I have self-confidence. And then you do that for a few more days. Then that became a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. And then you look back and you're like, wow, I haven't touched drugs now in 3 months. I have exercised regularly for the past 3 months. I have stayed away from certain people for the past 3 months. And the amount of confidence that comes with that is life changing. But it started with just focusing on that day and compounding everything over time. So focus on today. Tip number 9, don't feel sorry for yourself. I'm going to tell another jail story, and here's why. So growing up, I did have a lot of adversity in my life. My parents got divorced when I was 5. I got bullied a lot in school. I didn't make sports teams, even though I love sports. Didn't have much luck with girls in school. And I began to use those things as excuses to behave in a certain way, to lash out on other people, to do drugs, to sell drugs, so on and so forth. And if you know my story, it ended up getting me incarcerated on felony drug charges. There was a conversation I ended up having with my cellmate who got me into fitness that really changed my life. And we're sitting there in the cell and he was trying to convince me to work out. And at the time, I was very, very against the idea of working out publicly in jail. I was mortified. I was scared and I was making all kinds of excuses. So he's asking me about my life. And he's like, why are you in jail? Why'd you get addicted to drugs? Why'd you sell drugs? All these things. And I started to blame my parents for the divorce. I started to blame kids for bullying me. I started to blame the people who rejected me. I started blaming people for cutting me from sports teams. I started blaming everybody else for my problems but myself. And he looked at me and he said, quit being a victim. And I was frozen. I was like, what is this guy saying to me? I just told him all these horrible things that had happened to me in my life. He's like, Doug, you're blaming everybody for your problems except yourself. He's like, there's plenty of people that go through what you went through that aren't in jail, right, Doug? And I'm like, yep. He said, nobody's coming to rescue you. This is up to you. You have two choices in here. You can be a man, look yourself in the mirror and say, you got yourself here and it's up to you to change. Or you can be a victim and go cry in the corner and say, woe is me, and blame everybody else for your problems and feel sorry for yourself. He's like, which one do you want to be? And it was in that moment where I felt this sense of empowerment for the first time. And I felt like, wow, this guy is right. Like up until this point, I have been blaming everybody else for my problems. And while in the near term, it can feel good because you can start to rationalize where you're at in your life and you can start to justify some of the poor decisions that you've made. The reality is it gets you nowhere. Like I began to understand, like, wow, I clearly don't know what I'm doing. I had 21 jobs by the time I was 21 years old when I was in jail. I was a drug addict, convicted felon, damaged relationships with my family, horrible self-esteem, no self-confidence. Clearly, feeling sorry for myself got me nowhere. Nowhere. I share that story for a few reasons. One, to know that, listen, we all have stories. We all go through a lot of pain in our lives. Some had it way worse than I did. Some had it much better. The point I'm trying to make here is that the minute you start to feel sorry for yourself and blame everybody else for your problems and give your power away to other people, you lose. Because now you are letting other people and their actions dictate how you feel about yourself and dictate how you live your life. And it's a very, very slippery slope because, to be honest, like people might look at my story and say, wow, you had it so bad. And they can begin to understand why I made some of the choices that I made. And if people told me that enough, I would believe it. And I'd be like, oh, like my life was bad. So I can behave in a certain way. And then everybody would feel sorry for me. And I would feel better as a result of that. But at the end of the day, you know how much it helps you? Zero. Zero. Because you'll get to a point in your life where you're like, wow, I have blamed everybody else for my problems for so long. I haven't taken any action. And now I'm miserable. And now I do fall behind. So if you're somebody right now who's feeling behind, the last thing you want to do is blame other people for your problems and just accept, like, all right, like my life may have sucked. Some people may have treated me poorly. The chips didn't fall the way I expected them to. And also saying, I can't control that. So what can I do now to change things moving forward? Once you begin to realize that, your life will change because now you're going to take your power back and you're going to take back control of your life. Because when you're going through adversity and you're going through hard times, we often feel out of control. And so you really have to get a grasp on the things you can control. And you can control your actions. You can control your behaviors. You can control how you spend your time. You can control who you spend time with, right? So the more you can limit that victim mindset, the better off you will be. Tip number 10, you got to learn how to stack small wins. Now, if you're somebody who's feeling behind in your life, I would imagine that your self-confidence might not be where you want it to be, or your self-esteem might not be where you want it to be. And I get it. I'm going to tell another jail story because I think it really encapsulates how I built my self-confidence and really how I got to where I am today. Now, after the conversation with my cellmate, I was super motivated to exercise. The problem was I was so out of shape and so unfit that I had to start from literally zero. And what I mean by that is my cellmate got me down to do a push-up. I couldn't do a single push-up for my feet, couldn't do one for my knees. I could barely walk up and down the steps because I was out of breath because my cardiovascular fitness was so poor because I was also smoking cigarettes. And over time, with his motivation and encouragement, training me in there every single day, I was able to do a set of 10 push-ups and run a mile by the time I left my 90-day sentence. Now, the thought of that back then was like the thought of me now, like climbing Mount Everest. It seemed nearly impossible. There's no way that was going to happen. But the way we did it was we stacked small wins. We started with me being able to hold myself up in a push-up position for my knees. Then we started with me being able to do a single push-up for my knees, then 2 push-ups for my knees, all the way up until I did a set of 10 push-ups for my knees. Then the same thing happened with my feet, where we would start with holding myself up in a push-up position and doing a push-up for my feet and 2 push-ups for my feet, all the way up until I was able to do a set of 10 push-ups from my feet. Running, very similar, which is actually kind of cool because they didn't have an actual track in the jail. I would use a deck of cards and I would start with obviously walking around the perimeter of the common area in the jail. And every time I took a lap, I would pass a card from my left hand to my right hand to count, to track how far I'd gone. And I would repeat that throughout my sentence. And then I slowly built up enough stamina to be able to walk and then jog, and then to jog, and then to run, then jog, and then to run, right? And it wasn't the push-ups, the running, the exercise in itself that transformed my life and didn't allow me to feel so far behind. It was what they did for me, building the self-discipline, the self-confidence, proving to myself that I could get comfortable being uncomfortable, the importance of showing up even when I didn't want to, developing self-discipline, self-esteem, learning to love myself. I think when you don't do the things you know you should do, you're telling yourself you don't care. And I was doing that for so long. And so being able to do those things on a daily basis proved to myself that I loved myself and I cared about myself. And because of that, I developed this immense amount of confidence in my ability to do certain things. And so when I got out of jail, that led to me pursuing other fitness goals. And I ended up losing a bunch of weight. And then because of the confidence I built from that, I ended up becoming a trainer, which I never thought I'd become. Like if you'd asked me in jail if I was going to be a personal trainer, I'd be like, no way. There's no way. I was just frankly trying to survive, become a personal trainer, start to share my story, built a successful training business. Like all these things compounded from that one push-up, write a few books, and then I'm on podcasts and now I'm doing things like this. So you see where I'm going with this. Those small wins compounded. It wasn't like I just sat there in jail and was like, oh, I'm going to start a podcast. I was like, no, I want to be able to just do a single push-up and prove to myself that I can be strong. And all those things led to where I am today. But one of the biggest mistakes I see people make is they try to go from 0 to 100. The amount of self-confidence you will build from going from like 0 to 3 is life-changing. Because 0 to 3 looks like just getting off the couch. 0 to 3 looks like going to therapy. 0 to 3 looks like just going for a 5-minute walk. 0 to 3 looks like calling somebody and letting the shame go that you're having trouble, that you need help. 0 to 3 is writing yourself some sort of forgiveness letter about some of the things that you've said to yourself over the years. And so I just encourage people to really focus on those small wins. Don't try to lose 50 pounds at once. Don't try to run the 5K if you haven't run in a decade. Don't try and overhaul your entire life in one day. Stack small wins. Tip number 11, find ways to be held accountable. When you're changing your life or you're feeling far behind, you're looking to make that pivot, it can often be hard to keep yourself accountable. And I get it. Like if I hadn't had my cellmate in jail, I wouldn't be where I am today. He held me accountable every day during my 90-day sentence to help me develop the discipline, self-accountability, confidence, etc. that I needed for when I got out. So if you're somebody who has a track record of not reaching your goals, if you're somebody who has a track record of giving up on yourself, if you're somebody who has a track record of relapsing, if you're somebody who has a track record of fill in the blank of not reaching whatever goal it is that you want, make sure you find yourself a mentor. Make sure you find yourself a sponsor. Make sure you find yourself somebody that can hold you accountable. Somebody that you can text and say, I made it to the gym today, the Jew. Somebody that you can text, hey, I'm feeling X, Y, and Z. Somebody that you can text and reach out to and let them know what your goals are for the week. But this also can be where things like Facebook groups can help. Where there's a community of people where you check in every day, or there's a community of people you can write a message and say, hey, I'm not feeling like going to the gym today. Like, what do I do? Or, hey, I'm really having a hard time with X, Y, and Z problem. What can I do? Or, hey, I feel just down about myself and my goals. Like, what can I do? And the support that will come to you can really help you keep going along the journey. Because let's face it, I've definitely been there. Like, it's easy to give up on your goals at times. It's easy to quit on yourself with what you're working on and then not hold yourself accountable. And I would say I'm a pretty disciplined person now, and I'm pretty good at following through with what I say I'm going to do. I also know that this has come because of people in my life holding me accountable for a period of time. my cellmate, mentors in the fitness space, business coaches, close friends that are not afraid to call me on my BS when I'm acting out. Comes from colleagues who challenge me, right? Comes from personal trainers and coaches that I've hired throughout the years that keep me accountable and keep me in line with where I want to go. So find that person that you can trust that can hold you accountable. If it's mental health related, obviously that's where hiring a licensed mental health professional can come in, a therapist. Or if you're somebody who's battling addiction, the 12-step program I know is very powerful for that. And having a sponsor can be very instrumental in that aspect of your life. So find ways to be held accountable. So important, because I get it. It's not easy when you're feeling lost or feeling behind in your life to achieve certain things. Like sometimes discipline alone doesn't cut it because life's going to happen. So having people you can lean on to hold you accountable is crucial. Now, I just shared 11 tips. I could have shared so many more. Hopefully this helps you feel inspired to take that step, transform your life, and become the person that you want to be.
Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, I really think you're going to like this video as well. I'll see you there.